There's a moment the avoidant never prepared for. Not the distance, not the withdrawal, not even the end of the relationship. They'd engineered all of that before. The moment they never prepared for is the one where they realize the clock ran out. Not the clock on the relationship, the clock on the choice. The window where returning was possible has closed. The person they pushed away has genuinely moved forward. And the door that was always open, that they quietly assumed would stay open indefinitely because it always had, is simply no longer there. Why does the avoidant who created every distance seem completely unprepared for permanent distance? Why does someone who spent years managing exits feel blindsided by the finality of yours? What happens inside an avoidant's psychology at the exact moment they understand, not intellectually but in the body, that they ran out of time? Most people believe the avoidance regret is about love finally arriving too late. That's the romantic version. The psychological version is more precise and more important to understand. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the avoidance final regret actually is, what psychological structure produces it, why it arrives when it does and not before, and what it means for the way you carry everything that happened between you from this point forward. Stay until the end. What I have to say in the last section is the part this entire video has been building toward. If this channel gives you what you come here for, subscribe now and never miss what comes next. Here is the misread most people make about avoidant regret. They think it's about realizing your worth. The narrative goes, they didn't appreciate you while they had you, but distance made them see clearly what they had, and now, too late, they understand. That narrative is emotionally satisfying. It is also incomplete, because it locates the source of the regret in their perception of you, as if the problem was always that they saw you incorrectly. The actual source of the regret runs deeper, and it is not about you at all. Here is the real mechanism. The avoidant spent the entire relationship, and the time following it, operating on an assumption so fundamental they were never fully conscious of it. The assumption was this: I can always return, not as a decision, as a structural operating premise. The avoidant who creates distance, who withdraws, who exits without closure, does all of this on the unconscious foundation that the option of return exists, that the person is still there, still carrying something, still organized around the possibility of them. That assumption is what makes the distance feel safe, not just bearable, safe. Because safe to the avoidant system means reversible, and reversible means I have not yet paid the full cost of the pattern. The final regret is not the regret of someone who finally sees your worth. It is the regret of someone whose operating assumption has been permanently invalidated. The option is gone. The reversibility is gone. And with it, the entire architecture of safety that the avoidance pattern was built on. That is not a love realization. That is an existential collapse of the belief system that made every exit feel like a choice rather than a loss. There are 5 phases that describe how the avoidant arrives at their final regret and what each phase costs them. The first is the infinite extension phase. Throughout the relationship and the period following its end, the avoidant operates under what could be called the infinite extension assumption. Time in their relational model is always available. If this connection doesn't work now, it could work later. If this person is hurt now, they will recover and remain available. If the distance has gone too far, it can always be reversed, with the right gesture at the right moment. Externally, this looks like the comfortable confidence of someone who has not yet felt urgency. Internally, the avoidant is not experiencing this as a conscious belief. It runs beneath awareness as the background condition that makes the pattern possible. Without the infinite extension assumption, the pattern cannot operate, because the pattern requires the belief that what it destroys can always be rebuilt. This phase ends not with a dramatic event, but with the quiet arrival of evidence. The second phase is the evidence accumulation phase. The infinite extension assumption begins to encounter contradicting data. You have moved forward, not performed moving forward, actually moved. Your life has a quality now that the avoidant can detect, through whatever proximity still exists, that has nothing to do with managing the aftermath of them. Externally, this may look like you being genuinely occupied, genuinely different, genuinely not, organized around their potential return. Internally, the avoidance system is receiving this data and trying to reconcile it with the operating assumption. You are supposed to still be there, still available at some level, still carrying a version of the connection that their eventual return could activate. And the data is saying, that's not what's here anymore. The assumption is being challenged, not yet collapsed. But the certainty that has always underwritten the pattern is developing cracks. The third phase is the window recognition phase. This is the phase where the avoidant begins to understand with increasing clarity that time is not infinite. Not in a general, abstract sense. Specifically, concretely, the window for returning to this specific person, for repairing this specific connection, for accessing what was real between you, that window is closing, or has closed, or is now so narrow that entering it would require a level of vulnerability and risk that the avoidance system has never had to produce before. Externally, this is often the phase that produces the indirect reach, the reach that isn't quite a reach, the message that seems to be about something else, the reemergence that doesn't fully explain itself. Internally, the avoidant is in a state of urgent but suppressed panic. Urgent because the assumption of reversibility is actively dissolving. Suppressed because the avoidance system does not have a fluent external language for urgency around connection. It has been trained for decades to express the opposite. The emotional dynamic in this phase is unlike anything the avoidant has experienced in this dynamic before. They are experiencing relational urgency, the feeling that time matters, that action matters, that passivity has a cost, without the tools to act on it fluidly. The fourth phase is the option closure phase. This is the moment the window shuts. It may be a visible sign. You've moved to something new. You've made a decision that closes the relational door. You've simply been gone long enough and clearly enough that the avoidance system, scanning for the available signal, finds nothing it can work with. Externally, the avoidant processes this in the composed, self-sufficient manner their system is designed to project. Internally, something collapses that has never collapsed before in this way. The option they didn't take is no longer available. Not deferred, not delayed. Gone. And this is where the psychology of final regret differs from ordinary loss. Ordinary loss, losing something that was taken, produces grief. Grief has a relatively clear emotional trajectory. What the avoidant is experiencing is not ordinary loss. It is the specific and disorienting experience of loss that is entirely self-authored. The option was theirs. The timing was theirs. The decision to delay, to withdraw, to assume infinite extension, every element of that was their choice made by their pattern at their cost. The final regret is not, I lost you. It is, I chose this, over and over, until the choosing became permanent. That form of regret has a particular weight to it that ordinary grief does not. The fifth phase is the pattern indictment phase. This is the long aftermath, the phase with no defined end. The avoidant is now living inside an experience that their entire attachment system was designed to prevent. The undeniable lived evidence that the pattern itself, the very strategy that was meant to protect them, was the thing that destroyed what they actually wanted. Externally, life continues. The avoidant is not visibly broken. Internally, the self-concept that organized their relational life. I am someone who needs space, who functions better with distance, who is not built for the kind of closeness others need, is being subjected to the most rigorous interrogation it has ever faced. Because the evidence is now specific and irreversible, not theoretical, not potential, actual. The pattern ran, the loss is permanent, and the protection the pattern promised, the safety of not being hurt by someone you loved, was never real. Because the pattern was doing the hurting all along. The final regret is the moment the avoidant understands this, not as a concept, as the lived reality of a life that ran the wrong program too long. Before the final sections, I want to stop here because this video is asking something of you that most content in this space doesn't. It's asking you to hold complexity, to understand someone who hurt you without excusing what they did, to see the mechanism behind the damage without using the mechanism as a reason to go back. That's hard. And I want to know if it's landing. Drop a comment right now. Just one line. Where are you in this? Still processing what happened? Already past it? Somewhere in between? Your answer tells me who this community is. And it might be the exact thing someone else scrolling through needs to read tonight. Most people, when they understand the final regret, move toward one of two positions. The first is vindication. The satisfaction of knowing that the cost was felt, that the pattern finally produced a consequence the avoidant could not route around. The second is the pull toward compassion, toward making themselves available one more time, because now the avoidant finally understands, and that understanding feels like it changes everything. Both positions are understandable. Both positions miss what this moment is actually offering you. Vindication keeps you psychologically tethered to their emotional state, organized around what they're experiencing rather than what you're building. Compassionate availability restores the exact condition that prevented the regret from being fully felt in the first place. Your presence as a pressure release. The grounded position is neither. It is this. You receive the understanding of what happened, what it cost them, what their pattern finally encountered. You let that understanding complete the narrative for yourself, replacing the wound of, I wasn't enough, with the truth of, the pattern couldn't hold what was real. And then you redirect, fully, toward what is actually in front of you. Not because you don't care, but because what you care about now is your own forward movement, not their eventual reckoning. 5 principles govern how you hold this understanding without being pulled backward by it. The first is called regret literacy. Understanding the avoidant's final regret is not the same as being responsible for it. Regret literacy means you can read accurately what happened, in them, in the dynamic, in the pattern, without that literacy becoming a reason to interrupt your own direction. You understand it. You don't inherit it. You don't carry it forward as something that belongs to you. The second principle is called finality acceptance. The option that closed for the avoidant, the window that ran out of time, closed for you too, not as punishment, as a natural consequence of time and growth and the honest accumulation of experience. Finality acceptance means you allow that closure to be complete, not just for them, for you. You stop leaving the door open in the back of your mind against the possibility that the regret will produce the transformation you wanted when you were still inside the dynamic. You let the ending be the ending. The third is called assumption auditing for yourself. The avoidant operated on the assumption of infinite extension. But here's the honest question. What assumption were you operating on? The assumption that eventually they would change. The assumption that your consistency would eventually be met. The assumption that the good moments were the true indicator and the patterns were the exception. Assumption auditing for yourself means you name those beliefs clearly without self-blame and examine what they cost you, not to dwell in regret of your own, but to build more accurate operating assumptions going forward. The fourth principle is called narrative completion. The story of what happened between you does not require the avoidance regret as its final chapter. Narrative completion is the internal act of writing the ending yourself, from your own clarity, your own honest accounting, your own understanding of what was real and what it cost. The story is complete when you can hold the full truth of it, the genuine connection, the damage, the pattern, the loss, without needing any further input from them to make sense of it. The fifth is called temporal reinvestment. The avoidant ran out of time by spending it on the assumption that time was infinite. You have time right now, today, in the direction of what you actually want to build. Temporal reinvestment is the active, specific, daily reallocation of your energy away from processing the past and toward constructing the future, not as avoidance of what happened, as the honest recognition that what happened has already concluded, and what you do with what remains is the only question that has answers worth seeking. Here is the truth this video has been moving toward since the first line. The avoidant's final regret is real. The weight of it is real. The recognition that the pattern ran until it ran out of time, that is a genuine, significant, costly moment of psychological reckoning. And none of it requires anything from you. Not your presence, not your forgiveness, not your return, not your acknowledgement that yes, you see their regret. Yes, it registers. None of it is yours to provide. What is yours is this: the understanding that what you carried into that dynamic was real enough to produce a final regret in someone who spent their entire relational life avoiding exactly that. You don't need their regret to confirm your worth, but you have it anyway. And the only thing worth doing with that information is turning forward, completely, finally, without the ambient hope that kept you partially behind for too long. You don't become the answer to their regret. You become the reason they had it. And then you go build the life that explains why. Self-worth is not confirmed by someone's regret over losing you. It was always present. It just took the finality of the loss to make it visible to them. And to you, perhaps, in a different way. Emotional intelligence is not the ability to hold compassion for someone who hurt you. It is the ability to hold that compassion without letting it redirect your life back toward their unresolved process. Personal power is not outlasting the avoidance timeline. It is being so genuinely invested in where you are going that their timeline stopped being relevant to yours long before they ran out of it. The clock ran out for them. Yours is still running. Use it. If this video moved something in you, if it named the thing you've been carrying without quite being able to say it, leave it in the comments. Tell me what this one did, what it clarified, what it released. And if you want to understand what comes after final regret, whether an avoidant who reaches this point is capable of real change, what that change looks like when it's genuine, and how to distinguish it from one more cycle of the same pattern, the next video is already up. That's where this series goes next. Go watch it now. The answer might surprise you.